from mercy. Like a speeding locomotive, got me on the run, got me shaking, got me waking from nightmares. Life was never meant to be this way. Trying to take me back to yesterday. Like a station in the middle of the desert sun, got you sweating, got you panties drenched.
Welcome, everybody, to Juice Pro Wrestling, episode 83, The Swingin' Man, with Juice and Sretton. Today is a very special guest. This guy has been all over the place. We're talking WWF, WWE, TNA, ECW, and more currently, Impact Wrestling. We're talking about the man, the myth, the legend himself, Johnny Swinger. What's up, Johnny?
Wow, guys, thank you. It's a heck of an intro there. Very impressive. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime, man. I am so stoked that you're back with Impact and this gimmick, this like almost like a Johnny Retro deal going on. I think it's great. Everything I've seen from the vignettes to the little parts backstage with like Ace Austin and shit like that, I think it's money, man. And it is so good to see you back on television, brother.
I'm having a lot of fun with it, and that's the way it was pitched to me. Scott D'Amore had called me right around the 4th of July. He goes, "We've got an idea for you at Impact that it's going to be fun and easy." And I'm like, "Man, you just said the magic words." If I wanted to do something hard, I'd go get an 8 to 5 somewhere on a construction site with a jackhammer or whatever. I mean, that's what I'm in this. I've always been in this profession for that. I want to have fun, and to me, easy. If it's easy, it's fun. If it's fun, it's easy. And when you throw money in the mix, it doesn't get any better.
Oh, that's right. So speaking of Scott, I mean, you guys kind of go way back to, didn't you get your start kind of with him in Border City?
I did. Actually, the way that all came about, I was actually in my first year of working in Canada, and I was up in Winnipeg, Manitoba there doing Arctic tours where we'd go up to these Indian reservations over frozen lakes, and Ed wrote about it in his book, and me, him, and Rhino, and Christian, a whole host of others, Jericho, Lance Storm, we're all on these tours. And we'd come back to Winnipeg on the weekends because we wrestled during the week on these shows. And I just, this was before cell phones. I got a message at the hotel to call this Scott D'Amore back. So I'm on the payphone calling him, and I'd never met him before, never heard of him. And he's just like, "Hey, man, I've seen you and Adam, who was Edge, on the Winnipeg TV. You guys look great. Would you be interested in doing TV for WCW?" And I'm like, "Man, twist my arm, right?" Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. I was about 19 years old. This guy's asking me if I want to go on national TV with, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and all these guys. And then as soon as I got back, he booked me in Macon, Georgia in June of '95 for the first TV. And man, I was all in with it, and they took a liking to me, and I kept working with them. And but he really got the ball rolling for me on that first step on the TV, and it really led to a lot of good stuff for me.
Oh yeah, and real quick, just kind of going back. So when did what was like your first interest in the sport of professional wrestling? Where'd that come from, or when did it start for you?
Like a lot of people, I saw really young. Probably 10, 11 years old, seeing it on TV, and I was kind of blown away by it. And I guess the first time I went to a live event in the Buffalo, New York, there where I'm from, at the old War Memorial, I was hooked when I saw 16,000 people, and this place was moving. Iron Sheik gets in the ring, and he just started talking on the microphone, and the people were going nuts. And I'm like, man, and I wasn't even a fan at that point. It was like, I want to do that. You know what I mean? Forget the fan thing. I'm not buying a program, and I'm not buying a T-shirt. I'm going to watch these guys, and until I get old enough to do it. And that's kind of how I got started. Nice.
So, would you say who would be like your main? I guess I don't want to say influence, but who's the guy that if you're say there's one guy out of when you were a kid that wrestling, like where you were just like enamored with, like, man, this dude's a badass, or who kind of did it for you?
And it's hard to say because there were so many from that '80s era, and it'd be even hard to pick a couple of guys that weren't. You know what I'm saying? Where it was just an unbelievable time to. As far as the wrestling talent was concerned, everybody that you ever saw on TV was was a journeyman, had been around it forever, and they were all the super pros. And I guess I just really gravitated towards the bad guys. I mean, Hulk Hogan was the big USA American hero, and then everybody that got in there with him was just, by being in there, was his ultimate villain. I just really was interested in that, and that's when I finally became a wrestler. That's what I really geared myself towards. I wanted to be the big bad guy. You know what I mean? I felt less stress in that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? To me, if you tripped over your own feet, it worked for the gimmick. You know what I mean? It would have booing you anyway. So, but if you're a good guy, man, you got to hit everything just smooth, or you look dumb.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I agree. Rick Rude's one of my favorite guys to come out of. I mean, that, like you said, though, that whole 80s scene, there was just
I was a big fan of Rude, Paul Orndorff, Dino Bravo, Ricky Martel.
Yeah.
You know, most of those. Honky Tonk I was a big fan of Honky Tonk, and then once I got into wrestling, I actually became friends with him and got to wrestle him and learn from him, driving down the road with him. So yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, surreal to say the least. Going back to WCW real quick. So, you know, you get the call from Scott D'Amore, and you were with WCW for what, like 4 years, something like that?
I really was. Yeah, a lot of people forget that. I don't know if it's because it's so long ago, but, you know, the more recent stuff, they remember TNA and the original ECW, but WCW really was, when I started doing TVs, when Scott was getting me booked in 95, was when WCW started to climb after a really dormant period. And that's when, you know, Hogan had signed, and then Nitro started in 96. Yep. And then it really blew up with the NWO and Goldberg and Sting coming out of the ceiling all at the same time. And it was like the company was on fire in 97. And then I got signed. I actually worked for 2 years without a contract and was happy to do so. But they signed me to a guaranteed contract, and I was 21 at the time, and I might be mistaken. I'm pretty sure me and Rey Mysterio were the youngest contracted wrestlers. Maybe Alex Wright.
That's wonderful.
Alex signed when he was 18, but I think he's older. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, he was probably 22, 23. But me and Ray were the youngest guys, you know, under contract at that point. I was just blown away that they would do that for me. It was pretty good money, and I was able to live in Atlanta on my own, have a Mustang, all that stuff. I really got to live the life there so early on. It was a really cool experience. To this day, it's like I always point back to my WCW days. Everybody thinks, oh, ECW was cool, and it was, but buildings were sold out. Almost anybody you were in there with was a huge star, where there was, you know, everybody's into the, you know, it's huge crowds and they're into the matches. I mean, you really just can't, you know, I'm not saying it doesn't happen today, but it doesn't happen everywhere.
Right.
Back then it was, man, every building was full and everybody meant something, and it was cool to be in that mix.
Oh yeah. And speaking of filled buildings, let's talk about one in particular. I remember, and you were on this episode. I'm trying to think of, man, who the hell you wrestled? It was at the Georgia Dome when Goldberg beat Hogan for the title. I mean, it was sold out. That was ridiculous.
I wrestled Chavo Guerrero. Who I liked a lot, and was a really good match with me. We worked really good together, and we had a lot of time. And I always remember that one because people ask me all the time, even to this day, if I go to an independent show with their swinger, what's the biggest crowd you ever wrestled in front of? And I'm like, 42,000.
Yeah.
And they just kind of eyes bug out. And I said, I'm not done yet. It was also the highest rated TV show that we ever did. WCW is the highest rated. I think it was to this day, it's still one of the highest cable ratings for a wrestling show ever. It was like a 6-something.
Oh, it was ridiculous. I mean, I've been a fan and involved in the business. Probably since I was 5. I've been a fan. So, as much as I am a fan, and so I mark out for guys sometimes, whatever. I try to, I'm also an entertainer myself, so I can put myself in your guys' shoes. But I hate it. Guys would always talk shit about, well, they did that. It was a great show, it's huge and everything, but they gave it away for free. It's like, so what?
That was a big issue. Yeah, that was even said the day of the show, if I can remember back 21 years. We did, and actually that whole thing was announced on the previous Thursday when we were doing Thursday Thunders.
Yeah.
J.J. Dillon just came out on TV and said, "This is what we're doing on Monday." So in 3 days, they sold that many tickets, and that pretty much was the climax of the company.
Yeah.
And it slowly started to erode after that, but man, it was a good 3-year fiery run, you know.
Dude, it was wild.
And, I was lucky to be there. I come out to the ring with Buff now. We do a lot of stuff together, tag team matches, and they're like, you know, they played NWO music. Like, Swinger, you were in the NWO. I was like, well, actually, when I was there, that company was just as much NWO as it was WCW. That thing was so hot that it really was. The company was known as WCW NWO. It was so
that's how they
so
branded
popular, and it was just a really, that was the perfect time to be there, and it was great exposure for me. I was on TV every week, multiple times.
Hell yeah.
You know, and people were watching.
Oh, hell yeah, they were, man. I was definitely watching. What were some of the parties like back then, man? I mean, imagine you guys are rock stars. They're on top of the world.
Yeah, you know, I was, I don't want to say I was in a clique, but a lot of guys made groups and stuff, and I was kind of in the Raven, Saturn, Canyon, Kidman,
nice
disco, you know. We all kind of hung out together. Jim Mitchell, who was Jim Vandenberg at the time, he was managing Mortis and Raft, and Raft, who was Adam Baum. He was he was in our clique too. We all hung out together. We all had apartments in Atlanta with pools, so everybody always had a pool party with a lot of alcohol and probably a lot of other things that I didn't partake in. I drank, you know what I mean? But I was never a drug guy. I don't saying people did it, but I think everybody knows.
Yeah.
You know, our guys do it, and it's just like anything else.
Teach them.
But yeah, we really did. We did look like rock stars back then. It was I didn't have college years, so those were my college years, and I got paid for them. You know, that's the way I look at it. I didn't have to go in debt for that, and I made money on it. So I got a lot of fun, and I made money for it. So.
And so from WCW, and we'll come back to that here in a minute. But from WCW, you go to ECW, right?
Yeah, I did, and that wasn't a planned thing. I asked for my release from WCW because I broke in with Edge and Christian, and I knew what they were doing in WWF. They were in the Brood at the time, and they were, I think, the tag team champions. But when I heard what they were making, I wanted to go there and make that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would do this over again, but I actually asked for a release from WCW, gave up a guaranteed contract with 2 years left on it because I wanted to be a WWF wrestler and Vince McMahon and you know, work with these guys that I broke in with and make that kind of money they were making. Mm-hmm. And I asked for a release without having anything, even had a conversation with Vince or Jim Ross or anybody at the time. I was just confident that I was young and talented, had a good look, and had enough exposure that they would give me a chance. And I went in for a couple tryout matches, and everything was positive. I got flown to Connecticut for a meeting, which usually means you're in.
Right.
For whatever reason, it didn't happen. They just didn't sign me, and Bruce Pritchard called me and said, "We don't have anything for you right now, but maybe somewhere down the line." So I'm like, oh, geez, what am I going to do now? You know, I'm 24. I just gave up the best job ever, you know, trying to go here. And then Raven had called me, who I was friends with, and he said, you know, you should go to ECW. You'll get a chance there, and you'll have a lot more freedom with what you do and be creative and get yourself over, so to speak. And then both these guys, WCW will want you back, and WWF will want you. So that's how I ended up in ECW. And I went in there for a tryout, and Paulie liked me right off the bat because coming from WCW, that was a heel in ECW. They hated WCW guys and WWF guys, so I had instant star reaction when I went in there. So Paul put me on TV for a couple months, just working with different guys, and then the thing with Simon Diamond came up just at random one night. Tommy Dreamer came up and said, "Do you guys want to wrestle each other, or do you want to be a tag team against two of Dusty's guys?" And we're like, "Well, we'll do the tag team thing." And we just clicked the first night, and went and did a promo together, and Paulie just said, "You guys are together from now on," and that's how that thing took off.
Hell yeah. And that's, you know what, that's probably, I mean, all the diehards, it's probably what you're most known for is and it was a short stint in ECW. And you're only
and it was only because it had shut down.
Yeah.
I had a good year there, and that was actually the year where we started doing pay-per-views every month, and we were doing really good TV leading up to those pay-per-views. That Odeum was full, man, in Chicago. I remember for TV. LA, we had 6,000 people. We did the biggest houses in the history of the company that year, but I just think the bills were just way run up too high for Paul to get out of. And I'm still friends with Dreamer to this day, and he's actually my boss again. Everything's full circle, I guess. But he had told me right after that, he goes that, I was figured in to be as a singles, right when the company did that last pay-per-view. So I needed more time there. I really did. And then, by the time that closed, then WCW was closed, and 2001 was the worst period because there was only one place to go for a couple-year period there. It was I had a real hard time getting through that.
Well, you went. You did go back to WCW, didn't you? You were in the.
I did. It was
tournament.
maybe a month. Yeah, maybe a month or two before Vince bought that out. We kind of knew ECW was over because we stopped running events.
Yeah.
We weren't even running TVs or anything anymore. And I did. Yeah, I called like Terry Taylor and Johnny Laurinaitis was in charge of Nitro at the time, and because of my exposure on ECW, they brought me back in for a couple TVs, and they just kind of put me out there because they could. But I think at that point they knew, because it really wasn't but more than a month after that I did those TVs that Vince was on, Raw saying, "Hey, I bought everything," and they did the simulcast. I don't think it's more than a month. So there was no job to get there. Kid Cash had the same thing. They brought him in, and they were going to give him a big push, and then none of us had jobs like 3 or 4 weeks later.
That's crazy. There were a couple ECW guys, and I know Mike Awesome. He was there for about a year before they went out, I would say.
Yeah. He went in when it was still pretty decent. He got a good year out of that WCW thing before it shut down.
Yeah.
And I think he got kept for a little while. With WWF, the buyout. I think he crossed over and was on their TV for a while. Mike was a big Japan guy, though, so he could always go back to Japan.
Yeah. I love Mike Awesome. What was your take on him, like, behind the scenes? Good guy?
Oh, real cool guy. Yeah, real professional, and, never heard one of the guys, nobody ever said a bad word about him because he's a really nice guy. And, I don't know why he offed himself.
Yeah.
I just don't think you ever need to do that. Personal issues, you don't know what goes on, people's houses and stuff. But I think if he was alive to this day, he'd still be working in the wrestling business. He'd probably still be working in Japan or doing independent shows, or even with one of these AEW or Impact. He's a guy that would always had a spot, I think, in wrestling.
Yeah, because he was he was a giant man, but hell, dude, one of the best big men I've. People always talk about, when you were talking about like maybe a super heavyweight like Vader. I think he's kind of one of my favorites as far as like when they say big men, like big men. But as far as a guy who was just like, he was jacked, but he wasn't a big fat dude. He was just like super.
No,
tall.
He was an athlete, man. Yeah, he
was
had a good
hell of an athlete.
Look. Yeah,
and I think the greatest reminder of what could have been with Mike Awesome, and kind of smacked everybody's face, maybe in WWE and former guys at WCW who didn't know what the fuck they were doing writing, was when they did the one night stand. And that match he had with Tanaka, dude, was... Oh.
Yeah, I was there. I was there for that, yeah.
Yeah. That was great. That was a holy shit moment,
Uh-huh. I'm surprised you didn't bring him in after that and let him just be himself.
Yeah,
I don't gimmick or something,
I don't get that. But kind of going back to the WCW thing, so we were kind of talking off air, and this is something I kind of wanted to touch on because I've never really talked to any of the boys about this. But the whole Chris Benoit situation, what can you tell me about that?
Well, it started in WCW with Chris, like what I spoke about, where I had started in 95 doing TVs and 96 and getting signed in 97. Well, I actually had a TV match with Chris probably in 96. It was before I was signed and I was just being paid by the night. And we were down in Orlando for the syndicated TVs for WCW. We used to go down there for several days and tape all the syndicated shows. And we had a really good TV match, like with time, maybe 8 to 10 minutes. And he came up to me. You know, we usually thank the guy after the match, but we were at the gym later that day, and he came up to me and pulled me aside. He said, look, he goes, I don't know if this means anything coming from me, but you got a future in this business if you really want it. And I just really, at that time, really took that as a huge compliment because he was, even in 96, he was a highly respected wrestler from Japan and the run in ECW and then coming into WCW. I think he was probably one of the horsemen at that point. I was like, wow. But he was always the most polite guy, you know, never raised his voice, never, you know what I mean? Just professional all the way. And he was, ever since that match I had with him, he was always really nice to be in WCW. And then years later, when I came into WWE in 2005, he was there. And I had a conversation with him at that one night stand pay-per-view you just mentioned. At the end of the show, we were all standing in the ring with Austin drinking beers and stuff. So that was how we went off the air. And me and Chris were just having a conversation about working out and how we were eating at the time because he was really telling me how he thought I had a really good physique, maybe the best I've ever looked, which it is.
Yeah.
And he was asking me what I was doing to get that. And we're on live pay-per-view drinking beers and talking about, you know, having a conversation there in the middle of the ring. And then, you know, he did that 2 years later, and I'm just like, that's not even the same. That's not the same guy. I mean, what happened to him? You know, I mean, I think my theory, you know, when all the stuff came out, where you know, with how much pills he was taking, we all knew he was taking the steroids. Everybody knew that.
Yeah.
Almost everybody was. That's not a surprise. But when you mix that stuff with excessive alcohol and excessive pills, and Nancy's taking excessive pills, they proved that. And they were in the midst of a bad marriage and having a fight and threats of divorce and taking kids. I think it was a domestic dispute that went too far.
Right.
Is what I think happened. And I think he lost it with her. And from what I read and heard, he blacked out afterward. And then when he woke up, you know, because they said he did it over a few days, right?
Yeah.
I think if you guys remember, if you're familiar with the John List story, the guy that killed his family, but didn't kill himself, but his rationale was, I don't want my kids to grow up a certain way. I'm not happy with this, so I'm just going to send everybody to heaven. So I think when Chris realized he killed his wife, he's like, well, I can't have my son grow up and know his dad's a murderer when he's a hero to him, you know?
Yeah.
So I think after he killed Nancy, he was like, he knew he had to take him and then take himself so they could all be together again in heaven kind of thing. And that's what, you know, people, how can he kill the kid? That's how I think he did it.
Yeah.
And he really thought that he was sending the boy to be with his mother. And then he still took a day in between that, which, I do think he, like Nowinski proved, he did have brain damage. That's another thing on top of it. We put all that stuff together. Mm-hmm. Nobody could, withstand. It's completely reasonable that he would do that, having all of that going on at the same time. Oh yeah.
I totally agree with you on that. It's it's a tragedy. It's this weird stigma. It was, and for, I think it's kind of lessened up in more recent years, but it was a huge black cloud over the business as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't plan it. You know what I mean? He did not plan to kill his wife and or kid or anything. They got the pictures of him at the doctor the day of with a fan. You know what I mean? It's like he wasn't planning to kill his wife. It was just another Friday night where he had too much pills in him, too much booze, and she said something and something happened, and it happens every day.
Yeah. Except
he's a notable person. He was a heroic person to the people that know him. So that's what makes it even more of a tragedy. You know what I mean? That, God, this isn't just some bum that, lost his job or whatever and took it out on his wife and kid. You know, there was a abuser because I never heard of him making any kind of abuse towards his son. If anything, he was bringing his son to the shows and, you know, taking him around. But there were rumors that him and Nancy had, you know, a lot of quarrels in their marriage leading up to that. So
yeah, well, and I'm sure Nancy's been around. She'd been around the business for a long time, and I didn't know her personally, but I'm sure, you know, with any kind of substance in her, she would be one not. You know, she was woman. Come on, she ain't gonna back down from shit. You know. She's gonna look at him.
Me and Rhino were talking about it a couple weeks ago, and it was something where it said in the news that she was tied up or something, and I'm like, she wasn't a small lady. I mean, I could see her putting up a fight. You know what I mean? That she'd been in the business enough to probably know her way around. So I was like, just the whole story is bizarre. You know, how that came about, and you know, you'll never know because they're both dead. You know what I mean? They're the only ones that know what really happened and what led up to it.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, I hate to say we had a lot of guys in wrestling that if it was one of them, you're like, oh, well, you could kind of see that coming because he was a nut. Chris was like a church going, you know what I mean? Polite gentleman, does everything by the book. And most of our guys don't. Most of our guys, and I'm not going to name any names because I can't compete with them, but you know, you could name a whole bunch of names and go, hey, I can see that guy going sideways. I'm not surprised one bit. You know what I mean? But not this guy, you know, and not his stature in the business, too. I mean, it's just
oh, man,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And at that point, you know, it's weird, though, because I do, you know, I read like conflicting reports, and who knows? We don't, like you said, no one knows where his headspace was at, really. And especially if, you know, if he was on substances, no one is ever going to fucking be able to guess. But, he was, I did read like professionally, you know, I think he felt a little bit downgraded when they sent him to the ECW, you know, the WWE.
It's possible because he really did have a lot of himself in that. Yeah. And we all have that at some point. And I had that really bad when I was younger where you real easily get your entire life tied up in this wrestling business, and then when something you deem is not going your way, it can ruin your whole life if you let it. You know, and I think that's definitely a possibility. He could have taken that, you know, as a demotion and what he's put into that career.
Yeah, because he took a lot of pride
for himself. Yeah.
He took a lot of pride. I mean, that was without even knowing the guy. You just watching his body of work, you could see that. Yeah. You know, whether it was
he never took a night off, man. I mean, if I was on Glacier ran a show when we were in WCW, an offshoot show. It wasn't a WCW show. The office let him do this in his hometown off the coast of Georgia, where they told him he could bring in, and he brought in like me and Chris and Goldberg, and Canyon was there. And there was, you know, maybe 700 or 800 people. And this was like a fundraiser thing that they let Ray do and bring us all in for it. Most of the Atlanta-based talent could drive to it, so there wasn't a lot of expense to it. And I'll always remember Chris was having a match with Chris Canyon, who was another great wrestler that I don't know why he killed himself. But I remember walking by, and Chris looked at Canyon and said, it's going to be snug. So both ways. I mean, he didn't take a night off. He really could have took a night off on this show. It was an appearance-based thing for a good cause, but he still went out there and slugged the guy and threw him around like it was a pay-per-view. You know, I mean, that's the way he was, man. Every night was, you know, 100 miles an hour. He never retreated. And if he hit you, man, you got hit. You really did. You know. Oh
man, super stiff. I mean, he was like the modern day, and I think his idol, I believe, was like Dynamite Kid, you know?
Yeah, it's true. And Dynamite was one of the first guys to really, you know, because he was a smaller guy, and he realized that if he does this, that this will really catapult him to the top, and it did. And it worked for Chris, too. You know, he was the top wrestler, so that style obviously worked and drew money and put him in top positions, so.
Yeah, and he was top, you know, like I say, that's right. I've read reports, you know, about him feeling like the ECW thing was kind of a demotion when I believe it was only a year or two prior he was world champion.
He was, yeah. That's when he was. I think it was '04, right? When he won the belts in the Garden there. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, we as wrestlers, we would look at stuff like that a lot. It's something where I can sit here and say now, no, but then when you're there and you're putting that kind of work into that, and you're suspect of, well, where are they going with this, and are they trying to break me down? And you know what I mean? It's a real hard, a real psychological.
Oh yeah,
business.
I'm sure he was probably sitting there, maybe questioning, okay, what do they see value in me anymore, or they're putting me on their D show? Because let's face it, after that WWE ECW thing was garbage, man. It was essentially what.
Yeah, it was like the C show at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's what NXT is now, but NXT is way better than what they did with that, bastardized version of ECW.
Yeah.
I can't believe it went on as long as it did. But kind of you did work for WWE, so I know you did the One Night Stand, and you were also at the the Hardcore Justice in 2010 for TNA. I remember watching that.
Right.
Yeah,
I was. Well, when I did the One Night Stand in 2005, I was actually under contract to the company.
Right, because you were doing like Heat
for 3 to 4 months. Yeah. They had opened a developmental territory in Georgia, and Tommy Dreamer was in charge of that, who was my friend and boss from ECW, and we always got along great, and he knew I was in Atlanta. I was still under contract to TNA at the time, and what happened was Dusty Rhodes came in for a booking stint with TNA, and this is about the end of 2004, and I had split from Simon Diamond, and to this day I'll never figure out why. This is Russo's idea, was to split me and Simon Diamond up and then tag me up with Disco as the New York Connection. I'm like, I've never seen any tag team get broken up so that a guy could go be in a tag team with somebody else. It just didn't make any sense. But that's what happened. And then Dusty came in and pushed Russo out, because Russo liked Disco a lot, so we were getting a push. So I didn't oppose it or anything. But when Dusty came in, Dusty pulls me in the office and says, I don't like him at all, and I'm not going to use him at all. So you guys are going home, baby. And I was out of it, basically under contract and no money, because he sent us home for about 3 or 4 months. At the time, the TNA contracts were you're paid by the night, but only if you're brought in. And I had a pretty good pay for the night, but if I'm not there, I wouldn't get nothing. So I was like home for 3, 4 months when, Christian called me and said, hey, I talked to Dreamer and he's in charge of this developmental. And I said, but dude, I'd have to get out of my deal here first. So it was a process, and I asked for my release. And Jeff Jarrett kind of stalled me for a while. Eventually he gave it to me, and then Dreamer hired me for WWE for this developmental thing that they were starting in Atlanta. And he says, look, we're starting up ECW again. You'll be a part of that. And, just it's a way to get you in. I'm like, no problem. So that's how that all came about. And, but then, like you said, the ECW thing was real skittish as they tried to get it off the ground and all that. And there was so many people there in WWE that like half of them were like, well, we don't see this guy on that show. We see it. So that's when they were putting me on Sunday Night Heat, which was fine. I mean, when I'm on TV every week, I was making money. That's all I ever asked out of this. And to me, that's not a lot of people get that chance. So I wasn't ungrateful for it. But yeah, I was on Heat, and it was going good. And then I hurt my knee, a real minor knee injury, and I was kind of told to go get it fixed, and because I was not going to do it, and they're like, no, we need you to go do it. And I got sent back to the camp, and I wasn't happy with that. And I'm like, I don't want to go to this camp every day. You know what I mean? These guys are bringing in new guys that have never been in the ring before, and it just wasn't for me to be doing that kind of stuff.
Why are you there when you're seasoned at that point?
Yeah, so it was a good 18 months, I think, from when I signed to where, like, okay, if you guys are going to do anything with me, just let me go, kind of thing. And I didn't even have another job lined up. I just figured I could either go back to TNA or just go to the independents, which I hadn't done in many years, and I got all this exposure now. So I left there at the end of '06, and I immediately started working in Georgia. Like, I got hired by a group of people down in Columbus, Georgia, that were running weekly events, and they hired me to be the booker and a wrestler, and I was matching my WWE salary a month after I left. So I didn't miss a beat. And then what you're talking about, the 2010, that was another Tommy Dreamer production. He put that whole thing together. He booked the whole thing from beginning to end. And as far as I know, it's the highest rated buy rate for TNA ever.
Yeah.
Was that show. That was the biggest buy rate they ever did. And it was basically all ECW matches, right? And
yeah, it was a whole, I mean, even the feel, they gave it that lighting and everything that kind of give it the old school. Yeah. It was great. I remember ordering it with my buddy, and we were super stoked because, you know, we were huge ECW fans, and to get to watch that, and it felt at the time, too, especially because it was like, you know, WWE, the one night stand was cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, that was awesome. Yeah. It should have probably stopped after that, you know, because there was no way WWE is going to be able to put on an ECW product. They were too corporate.
What happened was the original idea was that Paulie and Tommy were going to run it single-handedly, and then they started assigning writers to it, and then whether you call it ECW or SmackDown, wherever you want to call the show, when it's produced by WWE, Vince McMahon has final say on everything.
Agreed.
And there's no way that anything could be separate from Vince. And that's why that kind of product wouldn't work.
Yeah, and it didn't. You know, it became the laughing stock.
Yeah.
You know, like I said,
they own the logo, and they can market it and make money with it whenever they feel like it. They can make shirts and DVDs or whatever they want to do, and that's
they got it
pretty much what they own.
Like, how, Jesus, it just, you know, here's the thing, like, it just kind of fell, and I don't think it was, here's WCW, in my opinion, you know, it's not that per se Vince beat them. I think they beat themselves more than WWF, you know, I mean, and not to take anything away from Austin and Undertaker and The Rock and that whole era. I mean, it was good, but let's face it, there's a lot of the Attitude Era stuff that's just pure garbage, you know? So it was, in a way, it was kind of like WCW and the poor booking and choices, whatever. They kind of shot themselves in the foot, you know? And here was...
Yeah, they hot-shot at everything. It started with the Goldberg thing, and then next thing you know, Kevin Nash is buzzing him with a taser. It's just like, they just kind of threw stuff out there week after week. Eventually you run out of stuff, and you got all these superstars that are overexposed and on TV way too much, and eventually everything slides.
Yeah,
you know, and it slid, and we had a thing with the network where Ted Turner had lost control, and Time Warner didn't want wrestling even when it was doing ratings, so there was a lot going against it.
Yeah, it was bad timing, and, you know, Vince was able to swoop it up. And this is one thing I've always kind of thought too, is they never really did, unless you want to consider the invasion angle, whatever. But, you know, they did it with ECW because Vince saw dollar signs after the, you know, what was it, the Rise and Fall DVD, which was very well done. I wish they would do more stuff like that, you know, for the network and all that. But that's, let's face it, that's what brought it back, that and the passion of the ECW fans. But they never did anything with WCW, and I'm like, man, dude, like, even like nowadays, if NXT didn't exist or something, like, fuck, man, just bring it back, you know? Come on, man.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Give the boys,
and they could, you know, but it's up to the man. You know what I mean?
It is. He'll never do it.
Who knows? You know, maybe you'll catch him on a Wednesday or something, and he'll, you know what I mean? That's just how that guy is. He's, you know, oh, pal, we'll bring it back next week, you know, and then he'll get sour on it in a week. That's how he is.
Because my whole thing was...
His own daughter told me that, you know.
Right. My thing about it was, it's hard, like the fucking roster split, right? Because, you know, they end up being like much like WCW was towards the end, where they had all this money, you know, you had Uncle Ted's pocketbooks, and, dude, you guys, WCW had a lot of fucking talent that it's hard to squeeze them on. Even, you know, the 2-3 shows they were doing. Yeah. And that's what WWE, you know, has
there were guys under contract that you never saw.
Yeah, and that were awesome.
You know, everybody knows Lanny got the $75,000 a year for like 5 years, and nobody ever saw him at a TV taping. And but that was more Randy making a spot for his brother, which I think is commendable. I really do. I think What a great thing. People don't realize he did that with Vince too.
Mm-hmm.
When Vince saw the tape of Macho in Memphis and said, "Oh my God, I got to have this guy." He freaking called him up, and Randy said, "Well, will there be a spot for my brother?" And they were like, "Well, not on top." He goes, "Well, how about in the middle?" He's the guy he didn't get his big break yet, and he was looking out for his family.
Yeah.
So Lanny's job in WCW is not a surprise, but there were guys like Nails when did you ever see Nails on the show in the late 90s? Never.
Nails.
But he was under contract, and that was a Kurt deal, Mr. Perfect.
That was his buddy?
Minnesota buddies there. Yeah, once again.
Yeah.
That's the stuff we need to do. You need to take care of your friends. It's a business of favor, not merit. You know what I mean? We help each other out, You got to have talent, though. Not just hiring a slug, these guys are all Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos and Barry Darso. They're all stars in wrestling. They weren't, They were friends with Kurt. That's how they got a job, but they couldn't have kept the job if they weren't pros. These guys were all pros.
Yeah.
But the WCW, like you said, didn't have time to invest in all these guys. With all the TV they had, they just kind of threw guys out there, in matches and.
Well, and you had the inmates running the asylum too, Kevin Nash's booker this week, then it's Kevin Sullivan, then it's Dusty or whoever. It's like, man, dude. I think in nowadays in the business, it's a good thing that happened because it's something that hopefully everybody's learned from. But getting back to my gripe real quick was they split up SmackDown and Raw as being two different brands, right? So essentially they're two different companies under one umbrella. To me, that could never work because it was like, so now you're saying this TV show SmackDown is a brand, it's a company, that's why I always had this bitching gripe about just bring back WCW. Yeah, it'll be WWE. Yeah. You could have done that and ECW separate. Yeah. They probably could have done a lot better with WCW, obviously, than ECW. That was just a whole different animal. And if that wasn't Paul E doing what Paul E needed to do, then obviously it was going to end up.
Well, think about it. WCW and WWF were just neck and neck just a couple of years prior to that.
Right.
And ECW was never anywhere near those kind of ratings. So, just the exposure of, WCW was a big, large corporate money company, with a lineage of 50 years. So it's like, they really did drop the ball on what they could have did with that.
Oh, yeah. That's still like what Fox is trying to do, where it still doesn't work for me. To me, it's got to be, if you're going to do that, then still have your Raw and SmackDown, but really push NXT as your competition within yourself. Kind of like they did on last Friday's SmackDown, I don't watch WWE, to be honest with you, too much anymore. I'll catch clips.
I don't either. I just don't have time for it. I'm back involved in Impact, so I got to follow that because I'm working with these guys and I want to be as efficient as I can for them. But there's no way I could sit through a Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or any of that stuff.
And it's become really stale. So real quick too, I want to touch on this because you're technically, I guess you would be a second generation wrestler.
Yeah. There was a part there that I kind of left out that we just skipped over as far as how I got into wrestling. I said the way I started off was I discovered it on TV and I went to a lot of that. And I knew when I was about 11 or 12 years old that that's what I wanted to be in life. And then right around that time is a really freaky thing happened. My parents were split up before I was born, and my mother was working jobs to support me and stuff. She was working as a barmaid. She comes home one day. She says, "Well, I met this man, Tony, and he says he puts up the ring for WWF." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, his friend is Tony Cannonball Parisi." I'm like, "Well, who's that?" Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I was just a kid. His run was over with. Turns out he's just a legendary wrestler, right, from the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. And this, my mother ended up marrying him. This ended up, my stepfather, his best friend, childhood friend from Italy, was Tony Cannonball Parisi. So, boom, here I am. Now I'm putting up the ring. 13 years old. I'm on the ring crew. I'm at WWF shows in, Ontario, and I'm like, wow, well, this wasn't meant to be. Really? So that's how the Tony Parisi being my uncle. He's not my blood uncle, but he was, I guess you'd say, a family friend, very close.
Right. He's
And
Uncle Tony.
I grew up with him, and I learned a lot from him, not because he taught me, because they didn't teach you stuff back then. You know what I mean? You just, by being around and hearing the way people talk and stuff, you pick up stuff. And so years later, when I went to WWE, Triple H knew that. He knew my history of them, and that's where the Johnny Parisi name came from. And I was fine to use that. I mean, I was proud to have had that experience with him, and realized till many years later how great he really was. I mean, if you guys ever get a chance to see him wrestle back in the 70s there with Bruno and Dominic Canucci and that, man, he was one of the greatest baby faces you ever saw with fire, and he did moves in the ring that, was unbelievable for that time period. So he really was a great wrestler, and to be attached to that and grow up with him and then have all that lineage, it's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I got to ask one of our friends of the show. He's been on here, Nikita Breznikov. You familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nikita's super cool guy. I mean, he was around, he was a police officer. He's an actor now. He obviously, he tagged and managed with Nikolai Volkov.
Right.
But he was attending all those old, back when it was Vince Sr.'s WWWF, out there in that New York area.
He actually did a promo in WWE when I was there about my Uncle Tony being the WWWF Tag Team Champions, so he was a character, man. He had a hotel and restaurant in Niagara Falls, Canada. It's the wife and daughter have since sold it, but man, it was like a museum of wrestling. There were 8x10 pictures all over the walls, and he had this little corner of the restaurant where it had the ring, the ropes and turnbuckles and stuff. It was a really cool place, and to be in there when I was a kid and already just obsessed with it was just a really good childhood, and then got into it as soon as I could. Right out of high school, I was right in the middle of it.
So what kind of, other than wrestling, Johnny, what kind of other stuff you're into? Like, what kind of music you into and all that stuff?
Well, I'm not really a big on, like, music-wise, not a real big fan of the stuff of today.
Oh, yeah.
I got kids, so they kind of take over the radio and all that, and I couldn't even tell you these names, but
yeah, you're like, turn that
I
shit
still
off.
like the old 80s, and that stuff's still on the radio, so I got a station here in Atlanta that still plays Van Halen and, Def Leppard and Poison, all those. And every time one of those songs come on now, I think it's my gimmick. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I really do appreciate that kind of music still. And but a lot of that stuff's still enduring. Like Metallica's still cool, man. You know, I mean, they started in the 80s, but they're still cool now. So
the last album was pretty damn good compared to the last several they did.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still into all the old music, and then even some of the stuff from even before my time, like Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles and stuff like that I didn't really like when I was a kid, but I like it now.
Right.
I mean, it's good classic stuff. It's real. It's not computerized. And,
right.
Everybody's got a distinct voice. I mean, like if you hear a Journey song, you never hear anybody that sounds like Steve Perry. You know what I mean? It's just
unless he's that little.
I like
kid.
where you hear a voice and you're like, that's Elton John. You know what I mean? That's freaking. I can't do that with any of today's.
It's hard.
Taylor
now.
Swift, and they all sound the same. All these girls that sing. And,
you know why? Because they're all auto-tuned, man. So it's like you could be the worst singer. Like we could be talking right now, running through auto-tune. It's going to be like, it's so crazy. Like what the hell is that? I mean, I'm a '90s kid, so I grew up with.
So my kids think I'm a nerd. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh, I got kids like you line up and pay $10 to get in a ring with me, but you guys don't think I'm cool. That's okay. That's not what I'm after.
Yeah.
But they think I'm weird because I don't like, God, who's that kid, Bieber, and it's just like, give a break.
Like who really does?
I don't. Where's the talent? That's what I want to know. Where's the talent? It just all looks made up to me and pushed.
That's
and
exactly
up and sold.
Dude. It is so. You hit the fucking nail on the head on that. And like the music industry anymore, like makes me sick because it's, there's no integrity anymore. It's all corporate, packaged, manufactured bullshit. And the guys who do have good musical talent, that are original. Some of them seep through the cracks, but not very many anymore. You know, like I was going to say a minute ago, I'm a kid of the 90s, dude. I think there was really no better time for more original, diverse music, whether it was like, you know, hip hop or rap or, you know, grunge, punk, metal.
Yeah.
There were so many different big name bands, and all of them were diverse. Like, you look at Alice in Chains, you hear them, you know that's Lane Staley. You hear Nirvana, you know that's Kurt Cobain, Chris Cornell, Pearl Jam. You know, you hear Tool, you know that's Maynard. You know, like even bands like Primus that were like funky but heavy, like totally original stuff. And man, there hasn't been a good decade like that in a while. And I'm making
you know who I'm a really big fan of.
Who's that?
And it's exciting because this person, a fan of mine, is Smashing Pumpkins. Billy Corgan is obviously a big wrestling fan, but we met him. He came into ECW. He was going to be a buyer. He wanted to buy the company, so that's how I got a chance to meet him. And he was such a big fan of ours. And it's really cool to meet someone you're a fan of, and then find out they're a fan of yours.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just that he was a big fan of all of us in ECW, and I've gone to a couple of his shows over the years. When he comes to Atlanta, I just call Raven and say, hey, you know, Billy, mind if we come? And, oh, man, VIP would come in the back and hang out. He's just a super cool guy. But just to stay for the show is like, this guy's a talent. You know what I mean? You could still work a crowd, and people love him. And big Pumpkins fan, man. And then, you know, all the groups you're talking about, everybody's distinct. Everybody, you know, as soon as you hear them, you know who it is. And I don't think they have that with today's acts. And
yeah, it's too manufactured.
Yeah.
The machines control us now.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, it's the Terminator movie is going to come to life. It really is.
That in 1984.
The machines are going to, the computers are going to take over, and they're going to be the new form of intelligence, you know, and exterminate all of us, you know.
Two things I want to touch on real quick since you kind of sparked my interest. Talking about Billy, for one, have you watched NWA Power yet?
I haven't watched it, but I've heard good stuff about it. I really have. Are they actually on TV, or is it an online thing right now?
No, it's right now. I believe it's just YouTube, and I could be wrong about that. I think you might be able to use it on the Fight app, but I mean, hell, it's on their YouTube channel. Tuesdays, get this, Johnny, at 6:05 Eastern.
I heard that. Yeah,
I always tell my girl every Tuesday. I'll text her. I'll be at work. I'm like 6:05 Eastern. 6:05, like all throughout the whole day. She's like, I know. Into the fire. They got fucking Dokken doing Into the Fire. I was never a big Dokken guy, man.
I've heard nothing but good things about it. And like I said, Billy's a super fan. And I've seen some still pictures of it online. And it looks like the old TBS studios. And it looks great. It looks different. That's the thing. I haven't seen an AEW show yet, but I don't know, you know what I mean? But that thing definitely is different than what we're putting out, what Vince is, you know what I mean? And that's the way to do it, you know?
Yeah. There's something out there for everybody, you know? Wrestling is like craft beer anymore, you know?
It's a smorgasbord of wrestling going on right now. I hope it's not too much. I hope we can get a good wave out of this. Everything looks and sounds good now. I don't mean to keep hitting WWE, but they're the only ones that I got people coming up to me at independent shows, the fans coming up to my table being really negative about the WWE shows. And it's like, geez, usually we need them to do good so that the rest of us are doing good. But it almost seems like it's the opposite now, where everyone's complaining about how bad Vince's shows are. They're touting our show in AEW and then NWA, like you're talking about, and even Ring of Honor and Major League Wrestling. I'm like, whoa, maybe this is the rise of the territories coming back to push Vince out. I don't know, but it's probably wishful thinking. But it's not positive coming out of that WWE camp. Nothing I hear is positive.
No, it's weird because they have all the talent and experience in the world, but it's just it's kind of like, check this out real quick. So we were just talking about music, right, and how it's just like manufactured bullshit and whatever. It's kind of like akin to that. Like, what if there was a moment when actual real artists all like were banded together and like, hey, you know, fuck this big corporate machine. We're going to take it down, you know? That's kind of how I feel about it. It's like there's actually good original stuff because all you had for basically the last 20 years on a major wrestling scale was WWE, and it just got too damn corporate, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I hate dogging them because we don't like to be like super negative and like, oh, fuck all that. But I mean, that's why you have all these other products. And we were just at the MLW Super Fight pay-per-view over the weekend. It was awesome. Had a great time there. Impact. I got to meet you at the All Glory, or was it the Pray? Yeah, it was All Glory. All Glory. They had too many glory shows.
Yeah, that was it.
I'm surprised there wasn't the glory hole one.
Confusing. Yeah, I don't know. South Bend was called something too. I think like
Prelude to Glory. Yeah. But yeah, where I met you at, and awesome meeting you, by the way. And we were talking and having a good time. And Don Callis came up, and that was another super cool moment. Like Cyrus the motherfucking Virus, like. They've done,
man. And like I said, he booked my first match in Winnipeg. That's how long I've known him. He was the booker in Winnipeg when Scott D'Amore called me. So to see how far back I go with, and in all the interviews I've done since going back to the company, it's like, well, all my friends are there.
Yeah.
It's like they're, Tommy Dreamer. I just talked all about my experience with him. Don Callis, Scott D'Amore, these guys were all huge influences in my career from the first day. And now they're all together, working together, whereas I had influence from them separately. Now I got them all together in the same company. It's just like, I couldn't make it any better.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, because you're still in phenomenal fucking shape, man.
I appreciate it.
No problem, dude. I appreciate you.
I love the gym, man. That's the good. I never go, oh, man, I got to go to the gym tomorrow. Actually, I'm mad because I only got to go 3 days last week because I was traveling so much. So I train for my career, but if I can't train because I'm busy with my career, it kind of makes you mad a little bit,
Yeah.
Because I know I'm going to be doing this, going to the gym long after my ring days are over. I want to be. Bruno went to the gym until a couple days where he died.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what I see for myself. I tell these guys, if you don't see me in the gym for a couple weeks, I'm probably dead.
Right?
I got to go, man. It's my therapy. It's my rehab. It's my entertainment because people are funny in the gym. They do stupid things, so it's entertaining.
Well, give me an example.
I get all that for $20 a month, man. You can't beat it.
Nice. Give me an example of some stupid shit you see in the gym.
My favorite is the imaginary Lat Syndrome with the cell phone now. Like they do a set and then they're standing there with their elbows and it looks like they're doing something on their phone and it's just the stupidest looking thing, but it's kind of entertaining to watch, and and these kooky exercises they come up with now. My favorite is the thing that the girls do, and every girl does this exercise. They lay across the bench, like with, like their back across the bench, and they put a barbell on their lap, and they go down and up and down and up, and it just looks like, like they're practicing for, and it's actually it's like the new woman exercises thing where they lay out at the end of the bench and they're like doing these hip thrusts with this heavy barbell on there, and I'm like, okay, what does that work? That like works the it's just funny looking to see. But they all do it. All people do it.
Yeah.
And every kind of squat that there is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Every angle, and it's just like, where are they coming up with this stuff?
It's almost like they got to have people, because I see these videos on Twitter and Instagram, all this everywhere, and some of these people are like, don't, make everything about sex or whatever. It's like, well, you're the one posting videos of your asshole squat while you're squatting. You're like, come on, man.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Good old-fashioned barbell squats will work, and Jesus, man, they're going side to side. They're doing the walk and lunge thing around the gym, and it's like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, just lift the weight.
I always feel like I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that are like me but not getting paid for it. You're trying to draw attention and get over with a crowd or something. It's like, oh, my God. Yeah.
Oh, man. But real quick, I want to touch, too, because it's so cool that, everything has kind of come full circle with you. And I love what Impact's been doing. I've been a fan of, since it was the TNA going back to like 2002, 2003, whenever it was the weekly pay-per-views. And I've stuck with them through the thick and thin. And there are some really thick parts.
Yeah.
Some really thin parts.
Yeah.
But I've been saying for a couple years now, since Don and Scott took over and Anthem and all that, I mean, they had to work out some kinks, but you guys are on the right path, man. It's the path.
I really think so. Yeah,
Man,
not just because
so
I'm
great.
there, but it really is. Yeah, they're really paying attention to detail there, man, and it's not easy. That's not an easy job to keep track of 35, 40 people, man,
Right.
and have it all make sense. And
Exactly. What you just said making
yeah.
sense. I don't know if you I saw a tweet when they announced, I think it was during Bound for Glory, when Joey Ryan had signed, and here's a guy that blew off AEW, and he's got the dick gimmick, which I think it's, it's funny, whatever. Some people don't like it. Some people do, teach their own.
I just going to quote Al Snow on this. You can do anything in wrestling.
That's right.
You can't say, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Didn't Mark Henry and Mae Young have an angle where the hand, she gave birth to a hand? I mean, you can do anything in wrestling.
Yeah,
I mean, you really
exactly.
can.
And I'm sure he'll have a long career if he's just flipping people with his cup,
Yeah, I mean, you can't get hurt too bad.
Right.
I mean,
but one of the things that resonated with me, Johnny, in his tweet, and as it pertains to you, I should say Impact Wrestling as a whole, he's like, the reason it was the smartest decision for him to sign there, he said, the reason is it made the most sense. He's like, dude, they've had the most continuity, like, with their storylines in the past couple years, they haven't abandoned anything, like, kind of old TNA shit where they used to just, where the hell is this going? And it would just, like Vince Russo writing and like WWF or WWE. I'm sorry. I guess I'm a little old school on that. What they do now a lot where it's just like, where the hell is this? He's like, they have been the most consistent the past 2 years. Why the hell not would I sign with these guys? They let me keep all my indie dates and yada, yada, yada. And dude, the crop of talent that they got.
And they're letting him do his stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are. He brought that in, and everything you see out there is him doing that. And even my stuff, a guy will throw me a line, another guy will throw me a line, I'll throw something in there, and boom, we make something out of it. It's not 100% produced and scripted out, and hey, it needs to go this way, and oh my God, that'd be funny if you said that. I mean, that's how we're coming up with this stuff, and it's really how ECW is booked. That's the Dreamer influence. Dreamer was the booker, the agent, the wrestler, everything all in one. So when you got him with D'Amore, who's a strong booker and TV writer, and Don Callis, who's a strong booker and TV writer, and you put all three of those guys together, and then people you might not know about, Jimmy Jacobs, who's a writer for Vince, was good enough that Jericho wanted him writing all his stuff for him. That just tells you how incredible he is. And then there's another guy named Robert Evans, who's another writer with us that was with Vince for a while, and he's just doing great with me, with my stuff, and has a lot of good ideas and lines, and he's a wrestling guy. He's not just a TV writer. Right. He understands the continuity of wrestling, and and what I like about him is he'll come up and he'll kind of do the interview like a promo, like in the character, and I don't remember a lot of guys in WWE doing that. They're just kind of like hand you a piece of paper and go, here, it's like, well, you don't even get who I am or what I'm even doing here. No wonder it's not going to work. But they got an unbelievable crew of talent and backstage people there. D'Lo Brown's back there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? These are talent relations. My gosh, he was in WWF for all the big years. I mean, he's seen it all. So
he was also in the Aces and Eights.
a lot of big brains there, man.
Yeah, it's you know what though, all the hard work and everything, and the perfect team together. It's really showing. I mean, I've been super high on Impact for a while now. Like I said, since they took over, through the show, I've promoted you guys and just told everybody, do not sleep on them. They are coming back. I like to call it bringing back the glory. It's man, it's super exciting because in the way they do things now, like acknowledging they do have a huge tape library. They have a huge history, you know, as TNA, and acknowledging the great parts of that, like bringing in Shamrock and like, hey, he's the first ever Impact World Champion. Like, I don't know. That's just the little things that they're doing right now that just, it gets me so giddy. Like, fucking do that shit. Own that shit, you know? Like, and bringing guys like you back and giving you a fresh, gimmick, and it works well. And RVD, who I just, he's went heel and he's cutting these promos on like everybody now, like guys from AEW even. I was like, am I fucking sitting watching ECW from back in the day? Because I'm getting goosebumps watching this shit, dude.
Yeah,
And it's
very,
great,
very similar
man.
to let guys go out there and run with it.
Yeah, and they're doing a lot of cutting edge stuff, and a lot of it is I mean, I like that it's more adult
stuff
oriented.
you can't do on Vince's network either, by the way.
Exactly.
I mean, some of the things I've said on there, I'm kind of surprised it's made air.
Right.
And that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I couldn't be saying this on the USA network. There's
right.
no way,
they got
calling women rats and rizats, and they're like, oh my god.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Off TV. Yeah.
That Ace Austin shit where they're backstage with
Yeah. Oh man.
Alicia
he's
Edwards.
a huge talent too. Yeah. Oh man, that was great. That was a fun segment. I love working with these guys. I'm a big fan of it. You had to have a lot of. I wasn't familiar with a lot of them until I got there because I wasn't watching. I was doing my independence down here every week. But man, we just got talent from top to bottom.
Yeah, you guys got talent up.
And everybody's doing something different. Like look at Elgin, look at Ace Austin, look at Moose, look at. OV, everybody looks different. Everybody's doing a different thing, and it's all good. Look at the women.
Yeah.
I've never seen a women's division
strongest
that was on par
women's
with
division
the men.
in wrestling today.
They're on par with the men. That's why you're seeing intergender matches.
Yeah, and that's great.
Jordan Grace knocked the fucking shit out of me at the pay-per-view. Are you kidding me? I mean,
hell yeah,
dude. It's there's no dud on that roster.
No, I consider this the new golden era of Impact Wrestling, and it's cool.
Yeah, and Axis is bigger than it was.
Yep.
Whatever they were on the Pursuit before. I mean, so it's just it's climbing upwards, man. So I'm just happy to be in the mix.
Yeah, and like you just alluded to, real quick before we end here, Impact is on Access TV every Tuesday night. You guys can catch that at, I believe it starts at 8 o'clock, or is it 7 Central Time? The time zones are screwed up, but ImpactWrestling.com, you can figure it out. Not only is Impact on there now, and they are actually, Anthem's like a co-parent or owner of Access TV, I believe with, was it Steve Harvey and Mark Cuban?
Mark Cuban, yeah.
Which is,
that's impressive too.
Yeah, really, really impressive. And they're going to continue to air WoW Superheroes and New Japan. In essence, I mean, they're, and I know they use on their social media, there's a couple accounts they have where it's Access TV Wrestling, where it's talking about, obviously Impact and, they have New Japan and WoW Superheroes still. That's people, man, don't sleep on this shit, guys. Impact is fucking, oh man, you guys are knocking it out of the park. I love everything you guys do. I love I mean, if they didn't do shit like the All Glory event, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet you and talk to you and do this stuff. And
right. I hope we do more of those too. I think that was a success, and they were pretty happy with that, how that turned out. And I think that's going to be the future of our pay-per-views, is doing those the night before. So
oh yeah, and really that was cool. Good too. That was a good scenario. At least if I was a booker with Impact or anything, to set that up, because the Midwest right now, I'm telling you, Johnny, it's a hotbed for pro wrestling. Any big company, I don't care if it's AEW, WWE, everybody comes here. You guys just came back to the Odeum. You've been there. The old school, the history with that. Yeah. But to do what they had set up, where they had companies like Warrior Wrestling, who's, we're buddies with them, and Black Label Pro and Zello Pro, who have all this amazing talent, and then you have Impact.
I was blown away by that. I watched all those matches, and I couldn't believe that. I was like, I just saw 40 guys that should have jobs. I mean,
exactly.
I didn't realize there was that much talent out there, and I'm just thinking, my gosh, I'm signed to one of these things. It's just unbelievable where we're at now with the amount of guys that are out there and the stuff they can do is just unbelievable. The guy they signed, that Ace Romero, my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff he can do at that. People used to say Adrian Adonis. This guy's bigger than Adrian. He can do way more than Adrian. So it's like, wow.
Does that make him more adorable?
He can't get in Canada. I know that.
Yeah.
He wasn't in TV in Canada. I don't know why.
Really?
Something with the border.
What's going on?
Who knows, man? If you got to catch them just right too, or they won't let you across in Canada, man. They're strict, man. He's going to have
Yeah.
jam nothing. You better have all the erasers on your pencils. They won't let you in there.
You don't say, eh?
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, man. Can you let the people out there listen know where they can find you at online?
Yeah, I'm pretty basic. Still on the old man Facebook deal, as my kids say. Johnny Swinger. Also my real name, which I hate saying that because I feel like I'm exposing something. But even though it's
Tell
all
me,
out
Johnny.
there, and
Why'd you do
on Instagram is Johnny_Swinger, and you can see everything I got coming up and going on, and all the fun stuff.
Nice. And let me reiterate that people can catch you on Impact Wrestling on Tuesdays on Access TV, and hit up the Impact Wrestling YouTube channel and Impact Plus app, because you can go back and watch a lot of you and Simon's matches from TNA.
Yeah, you might see some stuff from the old Asylum there with when we were the tag team champions.
Yep.
And we did some stuff with Dusty Rhodes that was really awesome to get a chance to go back and see some of that. That was a dream, pardon the pun, to do an angle with them on pay-per-view, man. It doesn't get any better than that, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, Johnny, I wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully we can do this again sometime, man. I hope you had a good time. I know I did talking to you, man. It's always great. It was absolutely my pleasure to meet you at All Glory and get this set up, man.
Same here, man. I had a blast, and let's definitely do it again sometime.
For sure, brother. You have a good night, man.
Cool, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That was our interview with wrestling legend from TNA Impact Wrestling, which he's currently signed to. He's also been in WCW and ECW and the E. You know what I'm talking about. Johnny Swinger. Everybody check him out on Impact Wrestling on Tuesday nights on Access TV. And before we close real quick, I'd like to thank everybody for listening, for all the new subscribers, everybody who's interacted with us lately and seen us at shows. Thank you. We love you guys. Keep it up. Be sure to share with your friends and rate and review and subscribe and like and just interact anywhere you listen to podcasts. And on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we're on all that stuff. And it's really easy to just hit a like button and comment. Even if you don't like us, comment why we suck. Do all that shit. And until next time, wet 'em up, 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 motherfucker. He's a swinging man, Johnny Swinger.
You gonna do sex to me?